And from Columbus, Ohio, I'm your host, Robb Dunewood.
And out of Atlanta, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech, aka T is for Tennessee, STATE, U University,
TSU.
TSU. I say that because, as you can see, Stephanie, our main host, she is a tech life expert. She is also a FAMU alum. Boo. But she is out for the week, so I did a little shoulder tap to my homegirl for to fill in for us. This is none other than Cherish Samuels. She is a fellow Tennessee State alum. If you didn't already know,
Yes.
she is also a Detroit native, Memphis resident, a mechanical engineer, wife, and mom. So I just wanted to bring somebody on who I have familiarity with, but also is in these tech streets as well. So if you would please definitely give a warm welcome to Cherish Samuels. So we're going to take some time, get into her background, talk about her unique job background, because I think it's unique. You know, you think of traditional tech jobs, you think of software developers, you think of, you know, all the cool stuff that people talk about. In 6 weeks, taking a course, you can become a software developer making $250,000. Well,
Part time.
Cherish has, yeah, part time, right, after work, right. So Cherish is a engineer, but she has a little bit of a unique job, in my opinion. So we definitely want to get into it. So definitely want to say thank you for taking the time to come on, Cherish. So tell us a little bit
you.
about yourself.
Oh, no,
You know,
before we get there,
all right,
I'm gonna call out the obvious. Y'all didn't have to gang up on me with these TSU hoodies,
Well, see,
TSU
It wasn't
t-shirts, and
planned.
stuff like that.
yeah, it wasn't planned. I didn't text email Cherish. Make sure you wear some TSU paraphernalia. Nope, I ain't do none of that. But she know what time it was. So and this little get back at, I don't know if you know Cherish, but Robb's daughter goes
Yeah.
to North Carolina A&T,
Okay.
and for some strange reason,
You
has the
probably
nerve to call their homecoming the best. What is it? The best homecoming on earth or
GO,
something?
greatest homecoming on earth.
Wow.
And I didn't go to an HBCU. I did not. I went to Howard on a visit, and it blew my mind. But I did not go to an HBCU.
So his
So,
first
like I said,
time
that was
really
my first time really going to.
being
I mean,
on
I came here in
campus,
Ohio Central State, but that don't count.
and
That
pretty
don't
much,
count to you.
It's a
and
different
pretty much,
world.
but he pretty much had his what they call it, his I don't want to say the cherry popped, but after that he had the NC State hat on. Now he all of a sudden, you know, it's like, so we had to me and Stephanie had to bring him back in, reel him back in a little bit. So, but speaking of which,
Yeah.
you know, talk to us a little bit about yourself. Talk to us about, you know, since we're on the subject of Tennessee State, you know, tell us about your background, how you got into
Yeah.
tech, how you got into engineering, and how'd you get to Tennessee State University from Detroit?
Yeah. So thanks again for the invite and the intro. I Tennessee State was a huge part of my life. So grew up in Detroit. You mentioned that. For
What up,
anyone
though?
who's ever been to Detroit or grew up in Detroit, knows people who grew up in Detroit. Detroit's like a breeding ground for engineers. You have the big three there in the automotive industry, and they're in the high schools and even middle schools, elementary schools sometimes. Just putting that presence in there for math and STEM and pushing it. So by the time I came out of high school, most of my friends were in engineering programs across the country. And for me, I've had a passion for buildings my whole life. I used to like sit outside this old abandoned train station in Detroit, which is being renovated now. But I would sit there and just stare at the building and think, like, one day I'm going to have an impact on big facilities like this. So my dad's an industrial electrician. He had just fully candid, he had a gym shoe cap when I was in high school. Your shoes could not cost more than this unless you paid the difference.
Okay.
And so to earn that money, I started going on side jobs with him, doing electrical installations at people's houses, lighting systems and wiring work, probably at 12, 13. So I got a very early hands-on intro into the world of engineering. And a counselor at my high school, Renaissance High School, anybody from Detroit. That is the best high school in Detroit. I just want to say. We in high school, counselor said, "Hey, I've heard about this program called architectural engineering." So at the time, there were only 13 schools in the country that offered architectural engineering as an accredited program. North Carolina A&T was one of those schools. But I chose the best one, Tennessee State. Went there for my undergrad, and I would say my career has just been an amazing journey since. Um, it it the experience there is immeasurable. You talk about like the homecoming, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
just like the small part of it. But I just came back in midnight from spending a long weekend with my girlfriends, who I met at Tennessee State, and the six of
Mm-hmm.
us continue to take a few trips a year, talk almost daily. Like, it had a huge impact on my life. So getting into tech, from Tennessee State, actually I went to grad school at Penn State, which was at the time one of the other 13 schools that had an accredited program. Complete shift, a very, very different
Right.
environment from literally the complete opposite. And turned out to be a great experience there too. Throughout my career, I've worked in different sides of the building industry, design firms, construction firms, some consulting work, utility. Worked at McDonald's for about 11 years as an engineer, and ended up growing and leading the design standards team. So we were the team that set all the standards for all US McDonald's restaurants. And
Okay.
my specialty has always been mechanical engineering. So I set the strategies for mechanical equipment, HVAC systems, kitchen design, and across the country for McDonald's, which was a huge role and got me a lot of credibility and recognition in the industry. And 2 years ago, I moved over to tech and Amazon. For those who are familiar, Amazon created a company within Amazon called Amazon Fresh,
Mm-hmm.
almost a decade ago. But since then, 2 years ago, we opened the first physical Amazon Fresh store. So if anyone is in the DC, Chicago, LA, or Seattle markets, you may have had a
Mm-hmm.
chance to go in those stores. I lead the team that designs what those stores look like, the customer journey through those stores, and supports all the fun parts of building a large building when it comes to codes and technology and troubleshooting. So it's a perfect merger of the world of tech and the physical space, which has been the majority of my journey.
Right. So let me back up a little bit, and
Yeah.
Wayne had a question.
I
So
mean,
you mentioned
I saw that made me smile. I mean,
so what is up with these ice cream machines? Since we got the person who designed the space and set all the standards in the building for the mechanical stuff, why can't
yeah.
these ice machines work on a regular basis? I heard there's an
Well,
actual story behind that, but yeah, give us, since we got the person, we need to get this inside
yeah.
scoop.
So I will say, I work next comment. That is not an HVAC issue. Like, number one, like, I not to say not my problem, but that really was not my problem. I would always say, I'll take your concerns back to the equipment team that selects these pieces of equipment.
Hmm.
But I still have a little bit of an allegiance to McDonald's. When those machines work, they work. When they don't, boy, I tell you, like that's a problem that company is still dealing with. There's a very good article online, a very long one, where you can read some of the details about those Taylor machines and the challenges that come with them.
Hmm.
I'll say, like I say, when they work, but they're quite complex for the service that they provide.
All right, all right. So you mentioned getting into Amazon Fresh. So talk without, of course, getting into any sort of details that are going to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the design as far as the building structure, as to how that integrates with the technology, specifically with those stores. I have never been in one, but we see all about them. We've read all about them. The ones to where, as a brother, I still might want to make sure that I hold my food up and make sure everybody see it before I put it in my cart and walk out. Talk to us about how
Yeah.
that the actual space, how that integrates with the technology that Amazon is pushing to where people can walk into the buildings, pick up merchandise, in this case food, put it in the cart and walk out, and
Yeah.
everything is taken care of automatically. Talk to us about how that integrates in your role into that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And, for a company like Amazon, obviously we've got warehouses and facilities, but this was a big intro of the company into like customer facing spaces. So it was really fun. The decisions were made before I started with the company around like to even go into physical spaces. But one of the core drivers in that was, a thing Amazon likes to do is sit back and say, what's the problem that's not resolved? Like, what's the biggest problem that customers are dealing with that just hasn't been solved yet? And number one complaint people have is how long it takes to wait in line when you're at the grocery store, how long it takes to check out. And so Amazon really started to take a step back and think, how do we make checkout easier and faster? So we have two formats. There's the Just Walk Out, which you just mentioned, and the Dash Cart. And our stores right now are a mix of both. Just depends on which store you go to. The Dash Cart has a smart technology advanced cart where the cart has a display, and as you drop your items into the cart, it scans the items, shows up on the display. There's opportunities because you're linked to your Amazon account. So giving you those recommendations, hey, you grab this pasta sauce, here's a great wine to pair with it. Or, this fish goes really well with this side we have, here's where to find it in the store. So it's a really great way to help customers through the entire journey. And then at the end, there's a dedicated lane where you push your cart out as you're exiting. It completes your order and sends your receipt to your phone. And the other version is the Just Walk Out, which you mentioned, which SNL did a nice skit on a while back.
I just pulled the link to it up.
I feel like I could have wrote that. I'm not even gonna lie. Like the first time I had never experienced Just Walk Out before I started at Amazon, and the first time I walked through one of the Amazon Go stores, which have the same experience just on a smaller scale convenience store, I walked out of there and said, that was different. I took a step back and went and regrouped with my team, and we actually talked about it. I've got a very diverse team, and we kind of talked about our different experiences and going through that. And it was interesting because that, for me, was very similar to what was on SNL, but there were other people on the team that had, different but very, relevant experiences that, others of us may not have thought of. So it's been a great opportunity for all of these learnings to come together. And my team, what we're doing is trying to highlight this technology, but also hide it in the space. Like, it's still grocery shopping. You still want people to come and do what they're looking to do, which is shop. And so there's a balance as we're, trying to figure out how to have this technology in the space, but not necessarily force people to look at it or to feel like they're interacting with it, because again, the goal is to allow you to check out faster, and we want to keep that front and center. So it's a really cool opportunity to work for, in the tech space in a way that most architects and engineers that work on the building space don't get an opportunity to really think about how to take a building that is essentially a service that hasn't changed in decades, and advance the technology that is within that space, but also, like, how do you change people? How do you encourage people to be comfortable with doing something a little different? So it's a balance of all those things, which makes it a really fun job.
I remember when you first started seeing the self checkouts in grocery stores, and I remember when I can't remember the name of the store. It might have been Giant Eagle, but I can't remember. When they actually, they had made like a local news announcement about, hey, we have these self checkouts now. Just kind of letting people know what they are, because people literally did not know what they were. They just thought they were like express lanes that didn't have any cashiers at them. So folks would go up to them and stand there waiting for a cashier to come. It's like, oh no, you have to do it yourself. So it's just funny how I remember when that, when they first came on the scene, you literally would have the self checkout. You would have a cashier at literally each self checkout to explain and show customers, patrons, how to actually check their own food out. And I just remember I was in with, I went to one with my mother once. And like I said, I'm way grown, but just happened to be home, and both of us, I took her to the grocery store, and she's like, "Well, if they're gonna have somebody standing there, can't they just do it for me?" Was like the thought that she had, which is actually a really good thought. But when I think back on that, there really is a fundamental change in how people have to perceive how they're going to do stuff. Because I'm telling you right now, if I just put it in the cart and I just walk out, I'm gonna be shook for a minute. It's like, literally that SNL skit was perfect for how certain people will feel, walking out of a store without having paid for anything. It's like, I absolutely can see that happening. So I just thought that was really cool. One of the
Yeah, I
things
know.
I did want.
I do want to
Go
touch on
ahead.
one thing I see in the comments. So, and really call out, like, our goal is not to push people to get out the store faster. We want you in that store as long as you want to be in that store, because we want you to buy more stuff and shop and see more.
Mm-hmm.
It's really specific to that checkout process. Like, the however long you take in that store, whether it's a 5-minute journey through the store or a 30-minute journey through the store, when you get to that line, it's a surprise. Because when you come around that last aisle and you get to the line, you don't always know if there's one person in line or 20 people in line. So our goal is to allow you to have your journey however you want. And then when you're done with that journey, you're done. You just walk out. You don't have to, get surprised and then decide, as many of us do, do I want to wait in this line for these three things in my hand, or do I want to leave?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, where are you on the debate as it relates to self checkout? Are you, I prefer to check my stuff out myself, or are you the other faction of, now, if I'm paying for the cashiers to be there, I want them to do the work for me? Where are you on that stance?
Well, I will preface this by saying this is my opinion, has nothing to do with Amazon or Amazon Fresh. I personally, it depends. So I have a 5-year-old. So grocery shopping for me depends on, am I by myself? Am I with the kid? And do I have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things or a few things? If I've got a handful of things, I just want to check myself out. But if I've got a cart full, I cannot stand, like, when I've got two things and I'm trying to go through self checkout and someone's got 50 things in their cart and they're taking their time, and then they've got a call for help and they've got wine
Mm-hmm.
or beer and they need to show ID. Yeah, those are the points when I prefer to have someone help check me out. That being said, when I travel to Seattle or to DC for work, and whether I'm there, for a work party or an event, and we need things like for the team, we're having a lunch, or if it's just me from my hotel and I want to get a few bottles of water and some snacks, I absolutely love having the choice of either taking the lane with my cart and having someone check me out, or just grabbing all my things and walking straight out. Um, and the reality is, if I'm using just walk out or the dash cart, I don't even have to think about it. There is no going to have someone take those things out for me. So um, I say I'm kind of across the board. I think there's a use case for all those variations of how people shop.
So, do you think, in your opinion, either by design or inevitably, we'll get to a place where everything will be automated? Or do you think people still would rather not necessarily reject, but would prefer, like you mentioned, to have the choice of being able to have everything done for me, or actually have that person to person interaction, whether it be, grocery stores or anything really, where
Yeah.
you see things going?
There's a convenience level to fully automated, whether we dealt with the same thing at McDonald's when McDonald's rolled out kiosk and started looking at different ways to order in mobile apps and stuff. And, same now with me on the grocery side. I think there's a convenience level to the automation that many people appreciate. But there are still the people that, desire the human interaction, and that will drive the decisions on where and how they shop. And I think, we have to think about that, even as we design the spaces for people to come out and do their shopping. even the increase in grocery delivery shows us that there are a lot of people that are okay with, not having that human interaction, and there are still a lot of people who prefer to get out and pick their own avocados or bananas. Obviously, we want to see more people doing whatever through our stores, but I think I don't know that I personally see us going to automation in the near future, less because of the technology available and more just because of like the typical, American consumer. Like, not every American has a smartphone or a device that's app enabled and has a credit card that they can tie to an app. And so cash is still very, very prevalent in many communities as the way that people are paying for their food and their groceries and other services. And I don't think that we as a country are ready to ignore that, to move past that. So that's going to continue to be a significant part of the conversation, and how far tech can go without still accommodating the non-tech ways of shopping.
Okay. All right.
So one of the things that you actually wrote in an email when we were just talking about you coming on the show was that Amazon was the first space where you were not the only person who looked like you doing what you do in the space. So, on the Tech John here, when we talk about tech, it is almost 100% about computers specifically. That's generally what we're talking about. We always say, you have to look at just, STEM, not just as computers. You have to look at the, being an electrician or being a plumber and stuff like that, skill trades as well. But it's got to be different. You are a unicorn of unicorns, being a Black female mechanical engineer. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that journey has been like and how that has affected you throughout your career?
Yeah.
And to add on that, how open, welcoming, or the lack thereof, have the previous companies that you've been with, how have they
Yeah.
welcomed that, or kind of, otherwise?
Yeah, it goes back honestly to my college journey, and Tennessee State is an amazing engineering school, and it taught me the foundation of what I know in terms of my technology and my knowledge in the engineering space. I had internships all through college that also, exposed me to a lot of things and gave me a lot of. My resume was built before I even graduated. Like, I had that plus. Um, I always said, like, moving into Penn State, like, I went there because as I'm sitting in this design firm that I'm interning at for all 5 years of college, I'm noticing nobody in there looks like me. And most of these men who have grown, through their careers, all went to Penn State. So I started, kind of making that tie and saying, that's the door opener that I think will start to get me the additional exposure. Adding that one line on my resume turned out to be great. I'm now like on the industry professional advisory council for Penn State. I'm working with them on a lot of their recruiting measures too. But getting to that, like, that was kind of the foundation of me starting to realize that if I want to stay in this space, I have to not only become comfortable with being in only, but also try and figure out how to use my position as I grow to make sure that I don't continue to be the only. Previous design firm, construction firm, even in, McDonald's, working in development, there were not a lot of Black women that were in positions of leadership, that were in engineering roles. No others in engineering roles, in architecture roles. There were, it was very just sparse. Moving into and you talk about like what that experience was like. It was hard. I mean, I've walked in meetings. People have touched my hair. Like, it happened last month.
Get out
Like
of here.
in
It
2022,
on
I'm still
Beyonce's
dealing with
internet.
people touching my hair.
Mm.
Walking in rooms and hearing the smart comments. A man telling me that, he only allows women in his meetings if they're bringing his coffee.
Mm.
Um, I uh, I have been also lucky that I've had some great mentors along the way who were, advocates, supporters, and even coaches, and saying, okay, like, we both recognize that that's not right, and here's how we're going to deal with this. Or, you know what, here's your moment. Say whatever you want to say in response to this idiot, and I got you
Mm-hmm.
back. And that
Mm-hmm.
helped me build up confidence in being able to address these things, report these things, and not feel, threatened. Um, and I think also, just, to your point about the unicorn, yeah, I've got 2 degrees in engineering. I'm a licensed engineer. I'm a Black woman. Like, those are already very rare. And so there is a level of confidence that came with that that makes me feel like I'm not worried about reporting you right now. I'm not worried about
Mm-hmm.
addressing you. Like, I'm going to come
Mm-hmm.
out on top here. So, like, let's not just sweep this under the rug, so that 3 more women are going to have to deal with this behavior in the next, day or so. Moving into Amazon 2.5 years ago was eye opening. Like I said, in most of the engineering spaces I've been in, I'm often the only Black person. I'm often the only woman, therefore only of both. And that just, I don't know, as uncomfortable it is, it became the norm. Amazon was when I realized, when you don't have that, you walk into the space and your guard's not up. Like, you're not doing all the extra work of, all right, what should I be prepared for today? Like, is somebody going to touch my hair? Is somebody going to tell me to go straighten my hair and get it done? Like, these are things that have happened. Um, just being able to get up and go to work was amazing, and it didn't happen instantly. Like, that guard kindly slowly let down. And honestly, I didn't realize it until I mentioned last month, having this incident where somebody touched my hair after I told them not to, and
After
that,
you
Oh,
told them not to.
after. Oh, wow.
oh yes, it was
Not
a whole thing.
shocking. Not
It was a
shocking.
whole thing.
Just just confirmation. I've literally told a story on this show about someone doing that after they were
Yes.
told not to do it.
Yes.
So
After
it's
they were
it's just,
told not
yeah,
to. Yes, it
co-signing.
happens.
Yeah.
And just as I was, like, just decompressing from this whole moment and thinking about, you know, how unprepared I was for that, even though I realized I
Yes.
walked into this space with,
Mm-hmm.
you know, 200 white men and, a handful of women in general, and, one Black woman. It's like, I'd been so far removed from that for the last couple of years that it literally threw me off. But it also made me realize how much probably more productive I am, just not holding that weight every day, in addition to the hard work that I'm already doing working at
Mm-hmm.
Amazon.
We try to tell folks about the
Don't touch
mental
people's hair.
gymnastics that we know, just the mental gymnastics we have to go through to exist in these predominantly white
Yes,
spaces. Sometimes the mechanism is code shifting. When you're in there, that is mentally stressful.
it is.
It's like, we generally are working in what we would call them, doing a quote unquote the white collar jobs. You are not digging ditches. You are not literally physically doing manual labor, but just the process of just having to mentally prepare yourself and just have your guard up all the time can
Yep.
be is just so stressing. So I can only imagine that when oh wow, I see somebody else who, even if it's just one person,
Yep.
you kind of can let your shoulders down a little bit. But I'm not a violent person. But can we make a rule? Can we make a law that if somebody touches your hair after you done told them not to, that you can just hit them in the throat one time real good?
Yeah. I I definitely felt that. I
Wow.
was, showing calm. I'm a professional. I'm in a leadership role at a very large company, and yet in that moment, like, I wanted to go back to Detroit.
Not to use the word, not to use the word subordinate, but I mean, were they the person was would they at least feel like they were on your level, or was it really like some rando
It was a
that just
random
saw
person.
you and just assumed that I don't care what her title is, I don't care what her accomplishments were, I don't care what she's doing in this room right now, her importance, that was just the move
Yeah.
that they were going to make. even afterwards. Well, I couldn't imagine it because like Rob mentioned, even after, even hearing about the stories, we've all been on the internet and on social media, and we've read stories and heard stories where people do the hair touching thing, and we've
Mhm.
all kind of debated and talked about and broken and down and dissected about why, as unassuming it appears to other folks, how of a, not a chess move, but how important it is for us to have that autonomy, to have that space violated,
Yep.
right? You hear all that stuff, but then
Yeah.
for it to actually happen, I can imagine how it being like, right, forget
Yeah.
everything you heard and read, and
Yeah.
if that would happen to me, I would do A B C D E F
Yeah.
G. But then for it to actually happen,
In
for
the
you to be
moment.
taken
Yeah.
aback, yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
In the
yeah.
moment,
So,
I'm like, what? Like, there's limits here to how to handle this.
all right.
And
So all that, I didn't want to harp on it any
Yeah.
longer because we can get in a whole thing about that, right? So having gone through that, kind of talk about what was your, you talked about your father as being one of the first people that kind of introduced you to engineering, technology, things of that. Talk about some of the reasons why you stay in it, even when some of those challenges, some of those specific instances happen. What kind of keeps you into it, and what kind of, you mentioned talking about the change. You want to change the
Yeah.
world. Talk about some of the motivations that keep you in it, and some of the things you're doing to change corporations, as it relates to
Yeah.
diversity, as it relates to STEM, things of that nature.
Yeah. So when I worked for the construction firm a couple of years out of grad school, I'm in my late 20s, and I started a introduce a girl to engineering day program at the construction firm I was at, where every year we would gather young women, mostly Black and Latino women, from the nearby school to our office, and take them on construction sites and just introduce them to different careers. And for me, it was the first year I did that, and there was a young girl, Black girl, about 14 years old. I think she was a high school freshman, who pulled me aside and just said, I've never seen a Black woman in a position like this, and I honestly did not know we could be engineers. And that could be, just struck me. Like,
mm,
that has stuck with me my entire career. Not just doing what I'm doing for myself, for my career, to provide for my family, and to, enjoy the challenges, mentally, that I like in my career, but also to make sure that I'm constantly being visible and giving back and connecting with the communities. Because I didn't see, I had my dad, and I had, other family members who were men who were in engineering or other technical roles, but I didn't see that with women either. And you realize, like, when you see it, I met my first female engineer as a college freshman on my internship, and to this day she's still one of my mentors and just an amazing influence on me. But seeing that is so important. So for me, I had a moment where I did think I didn't want to be an engineer anymore. And I went into consulting. Sustainability has always been a part of my career and something I'm passionate about. So I went into consulting on the sustainability side, and within a year realized, like, I need to get back to engineering. It became kind of a part of my identity in a way. Like, this is the title for the part of me that I always enjoyed, but didn't really know how to talk about it and how to make it a career. And once I did, it was really important to me to keep it that way. So now I do. I won't. Coming to Amazon was a bit of a shift in terms of my extracurricular time. I'm finally getting into a place now where I'm starting to, I guess, better balance that and give more time to outside organizations that are, focused on introducing girls to engineering or trades or STEM. It could be as simple as like talking to kids in elementary schools that are doing career days or showing up for events. Amazon has sent me to a couple of events focused on girls and careers around construction and engineering where I'm able to talk to them and give them different perspectives.
Okay. All right. All right. So, kind of shift gears a little bit, and it looks like so to give everybody, Cherish is pretty much going to take up all of our time. So we had some tech subjects. We probably were going to save them for the after party. So if you are a Patreon supporter, definitely hold tight. We'll get into some tech news and some things we talk about normally in the after party. But if you are not a Patreon subscriber, definitely join our Patreon so you can get that news. But looks like we're gonna spend all the time talking to Cherish, right? Because the reason why I say that, and to shift gears a little bit, you talk about family. You talked about people who who are your advocates. My assumption is your husband is an advocate as well, but unlike me, I met my wife at Tennessee State University. Shout out to Alondra. Her birthday is today. So if you're watching this
Happy
live,
birthday.
yeah, definitely give a shout out to my wife, who was also at Tennessee State
Yep.
around the same time we went there. We're all engineers. You didn't meet your husband at Tennessee State. So talk to us about, all the things, you were talking, you went to Penn State, going through all these different companies trying to find your groove. Talk about how you met your husband, and talk about your son and his special unique name. Talk to us about how that came, and your name as an extension of that. Talk to us about
Yeah.
your family background.
So are we talking about the tech version of this story, or am I giving like the
Look,
real like
I'm trying not to steer you. I'm just keeping it open, and then wherever you take
yeah,
the
no,
conversation is
no.
where you take it.
I definitely have a crazy story, so I love to share it. Yeah, I met my husband. I was definitely out of school. I think I was 32. And, full transparency, I had a year where I was like, okay, you know what? Dating has not been going the way I planned for it. I want to get married at some point. And so I had a year where I just agreed to any date. Whoever asked me out, I went on dates. So I went out with everybody across the board.
And
It's a hell of a year.
sidebar, that's so weird for that's so weird. That's so weird for me to hear that, because when we were in school, you were the cool kids. You were the AKA. Y'all were showing up at all the parties. Y'all were the cool kids at
Yep.
school. So I'm surprised to hear that that popularity didn't translate into people knocking down your door.
I think you know what? I was a nerd, and I think I was a cool kid, but I still was a nerd. And as I got older, like what I was looking for was kind of somebody that was equally as nerdy, but also a cool kid. And so the end of that year, New Year's Eve, a guy invited me to a party as his date, and we get to the party, and it's just not working out. Like we're having a conversation, but it's not working.
Mhm.
And yet there's a guy in the kitchen at this house party watching me laughing for like an hour, and it can see that he's mocking me. And so my date sends me in the kitchen to get a drink, and I end up talking to that guy for 3 hours and married him on New Year's Eve 3 years later. So
Wow.
that
Okay.
is how I met my husband. There's a little blip in there. We did have a date the next week. He stood me up, and I deleted his number, and then we ran into each other at a CrossFit class 3 weeks later, and that was like inseparable ever since.
Okay.
Um, did not necessarily plan on having kids, and it was a hypothetical thing, and then we had a kid. And my husband is he's a Air Force veteran. He's the smart one, as he calls it. He collects comics. He's a biology major. He runs veterinary labs. So again, another nerd. And as we talked about, just like if we ever have this kid, he was set on this name Rocket, based on a comic book character. For anybody that's into I think the Icon series, Raquel, um, her name was Rocket, her superhero name. And so when we had a kid, I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do this again. So if we're going to use this name Rocket, I know you thought it was a girl name, but this boy is going to get named Rocket. We
Mhm.
did it. We didn't tell anyone until he was born because we knew everyone would try and talk us out of it.
Especially
And
black folks.
yes,
Especially,
oh yeah.
especially black folk.
It
Yeah.
took my dad a year to be able to say it without a pause. My
Mhm.
grandson Rocket, like every time. Um, and we thought like, smart NASA astronaut kid.
Mhm.
He's definitely extremely smart, but he lives up to his name in every way. He's wild, he's crazy, he's sparky. He and I do Legos all day, and if you couldn't have put together a biology and an engineer brain and created anything more exciting.
All right, so it sounds like you're just bucking traditions left and right, right?
Yeah.
So you and one of the things that I think I asked in Facebook one time, you mentioned it. You said, I don't think I'm doing this again. So you just one and done, huh?
One and done. Yes.
Okay, so that's
One and
another
done.
tradition you're bucking. You're
It is.
female engineer, black female engineer. Talk to us about you put in the notes about your last name, because ever since I've known you, you've
Yeah.
always been Cherish
Samuels.
Samuels.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that and what
Yeah.
made that decision.
So when I met my husband, it was a couple of years after I got my engineering license. And I think by the time we were engaged, I had engineering licenses in 11 states.
Hmm.
Only have one now, but at the time I had 11 states. I was on committees for ASHRAE International Engineering Society. And I had a lot going on. And the guys at work, some of the engineers and architects that I worked with, kind of at one point said, we don't have to change our names when we get married. And that becomes advantageous to us for our careers because we don't have to restart.
Hmm.
There's no shift.
Hmm.
And so think about, like, literally three of them pulled me aside and said, think about this, like, just whether you really want to do this. And I had no plans. I hadn't even thought about changing my name or not. And my husband, maybe a week or so before the wedding, just kind of one day walked in the room and said, I don't think you should change your name. I don't know if we literally hadn't talked about it. He was like, I don't know if you're
Hmm.
thinking about it or not, but I don't think you should change your name. You've done way too much in your career. And it just seems like it's pointless. Like, we're in our 30s. Like, I know who you are. I don't think I'll be confused about that.
Hmm.
And so yeah, we got married at 35. I was 35 going on 36, and at that point, again, with all the credentials, I started looking into what it would take, changing names on degrees and transcripts, and I
Yeah,
nope.
that's a lot.
Yeah, so I
Mm.
said no. And I never did it. It was, again, explaining to the family. That
Yeah,
was
that's
a,
my
a
next
chore.
question.
Hmm.
How did your friends and family take that? What was
uh
their responses? What was their
they were
explanations?
surprised.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of them were surprised, and I remember telling one of my line sisters at a bar, and she instantly turned to my husband and said, "And you're okay with this?"
Oh,
He said,
wow.
"No
Wow.
idea."
Yeah.
I was the first engineering conference I went to. There was a guy who, was like, "Explain this to me." And again, being an engineer, I did the research beforehand because I knew why I did it, but I also
Hmm.
wanted to see, was this normal? And I started to
Hmm.
see that, there are other cultures where women just don't change their name, but also in a
Hmm.
lot of licensed careers such as
Hmm.
engineering, medical fields, a lot of women chose not to do it. Um, because of the shift in your career. So now everything, whether it's papers you've written, or reviewed, patents that you've, been granted, all of these things are now under a different name. And many of those, the records of those don't change. And so it's now
Hmm.
you've got to maintain two identities, for the
Hmm.
remainder of your career. So, by the time got to that meeting, having gone through my family and friends, I was prepared, to have that conversation. And there were a lot of guys in that meeting, who kind of said, wow, now I get it. It's different when you get married younger and
Hmm.
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
haven't established your career and all these things. But I think when you're older, for me, it was the career piece. But also, as I was doing my research, one of the things that also stood out was the identity piece. Like, a lot of women felt like, you're already shifting as you're becoming a married woman, going from single to married. But a lot of women also struggled with, that identity shift in addition to, who's this new person, this new name? you know. Um, so it was a lot of research went into it, but I will say it was an easy decision. The research was more to explain my decision to people that didn't agree with it until I felt like it no longer needed explanation. At that point, it is what it is.
Right,
And you
right,
asked
right.
about Cherish. Cherish was, people think Kool and the Gang. I was born when that song came out. That was not Kool and the Gang. The association in the 60s created a song called Cherish. And people from that era instantly, when they hear my name, will start singing that. In shopping mall, when I worked in the mall, people would sing it to me all the time in the mall. So my mom, that song was on when she found out she was having a girl. And I will say for me, again, getting back to my son, it sparked a love for word names, as I call them. I love names that are words.
Okay.
No,
That's an
I would have thought.
interesting story.
Yeah, I would
I
have
just
thought
want to say,
Sade. No, I was gonna say I would have thought Sade when Cherish today. That's what I was. But
Yep. I was already born then too.
and and it's something that, we men, we never really have to think about that. My younger sister, she just got married during the middle of the pandemic. And when she got married, she was 38, getting ready to turn 39. So like you, she had already established everything.
Yep.
So she decided to keep her name as well. So it's just like, wow, it's like, this is a thing. I didn't really talk to her about it. It was just like, I know my little sisters, like, that probably was not even, it was just, I'm just, because it's my name, so why would I change it? That's kind of how she is. But yeah, that, what you say, it makes a lot of sense just from the professional standpoint. There's so much stuff that you would have to do. And I never even thought about patents and stuff like that you potentially may have your name on. You're right. That stuff doesn't change just because you decided to change your name. So that is an interesting story.
I see the comment. I think it's Saray. The comment about the kid. Now that is, I will say that's one I do think about sometimes, because my son's last name is different than mine. My husband and my son have the same last name, and I don't. So legally, whenever it's legal, like, we just don't have the same last name, and I don't explain it. I don't, feel like I need to. I got over that pretty quickly, largely because I have girlfriends who had done the same thing. They got married before me. They didn't change their names. And I went straight to them and said, how are you navigating this? And they said, I just write my son's last name down on anything for school because it's not legal documentation. So who cares? It just makes them feel like clearly I'm married and I'm not just, not married or not his mother or something like that. And so I'll do that, Mr. and Mrs. on anything with school and use their last name. And anything that's legal, I just don't worry about it.
So you bring up a good point, right? Do you have that that not urge, but need to just make it so people just keep moving? Do you have that feeling? Is there an extra feeling because you're also a Black woman, and we feel like our
perception,
perception, and single mom and all those things, does that creep in as well, or is it typically, like you said, you've gotten to the point to where it's just like, look, just keep it moving, and just for formality reasons, do you always do you feel like, all right, I gotta stand up for the community and make sure they know what time it is, so I may kind of fudge the name so people know that we are married and he does have a father at home and yada yada yada.
I used to feel that way. Like when I was in the hospital having, like, literally giving birth, and they asked what name to put on his little bassinet. And my doctor, my OB, came in and noticed that his last name was different than mine. And I said, well, I never changed my name, when I got married. And it was like, what do you mean you didn't change your name? Like, so I think in the beginning, I felt a bit of pressure around that, less about the marriage and more about when I had a kid. But no, I got over that pretty quickly. Like I said, I can think of probably 3 or 4 of my closest girlfriends that did not change their names, have children, and their kids are way older than mine, and they've navigated this world just fine. So I think eventually I got out of the point of feeling like I had to justify it and feeling like I had to stand up for anybody. Like, people are going to think what they're going to think regardless. Like, I have a very fancy wedding ring, and usually I've got on like this silicone band just because it's more convenient and I don't have to worry about losing it somewhere. And people ask me about that too. Like, are you not married anymore? Like, no, I just don't want to wear my ring. Like, it's a choice. It's okay.
Right. Even down to, getting a little bit more personal, but not getting too much personal. Even how, again, this is all based on what I can purview via Facebook posts, right? But even you and your husband's relationship as it relates to, gender roles, talk to us about how, you and your husband navigate that.
Yeah. So gender roles went out the window, like, when we met. Like, we are two different people, and going through therapy has helped me realize that a lot of it, he was raised by women. He was raised by very strong women, and who were very, domesticated and family oriented in the house. I was raised by a man. My dad was a single father when I was a kid, and he was a former football player. He raced cars, drag racing. So like, I had to be an athlete, didn't have a choice. So we grew up very different. And yeah, even today, I'm a mechanical engineer. Something's broke in the house, it needs to get fixed, I'm doing it. I needed a desk built so that I could have something to put in my office, I built it. Like, I handle most of that stuff. Our walkway collapsed, I had to go find a structural engineer and work with him on what that was going to look like. My husband is an amazing chef. I can cook, I don't. I am very proud of that. Some women are, feel ashamed or are shamed, I should say, because they don't cook. I don't cook, and I am happy. My husband is probably down there making some exquisite 4-course meal right now that I'm going to eat when I finish this, and I'm going to be happy and thank him. But that's what he loves to do and not what I love to do, and it works out perfectly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I can see the cooking, especially being down south.
Yeah.
Folks, what do you mean you don't cook?
Yeah.
But
somebody said Wednesday before Thanksgiving, you working on Wednesday? You don't have to cook. So of course you can work on the day before Thanksgiving. Yeah. I can work the day before Thanksgiving because I'm not at home cooking. Like, that's not my thing. And
then conversely, okay. But then conversely, they don't ask men that if a man's working late on Thanksgiving, they ain't like, what? You ain't got to go home and help your wife cook or anything like that, So never. It just, it kind of is a microcosm, of how our society is built to where, women, engineers, things of that nature, all these little minefields, these little mind games, all these strategic moves that, being a Black female engineer, being a wife, being a mom with these gender roles that are unique, with a name that is untraditional, with a kid who has a name that's untraditional, how all you have to mentally, whether you do it subconsciously or you're just used to it to where now it's just like breathing, you have to navigate, and the sheer privilege that men, white men, whether it be white women and Black men, we don't have to have those same mental, game plan, as it were, just navigating throughout the day, and it just goes to, some of the strengths and some of the, just sheer determination it takes, to be a Black female engineer, in the South, married, with all those different, different roles. So definitely hats out to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. What is it, 55? I don't know, Rob, if you had any other questions or any other things you want to talk about.
No, I was just going to say that, this is the Tech Jawn, and we normally are talking about tech, but you have to remember that all tech is not computers. We say this all the time. It's like, it is okay to look at other things, within tech. And, we'll talk about this more, in the after party. But and for those who are wondering, well, what is the after party and how do I get it? Well, you can get the after party by becoming a patron of the Tech Jawn. If you were to head over to patreon.com/the Tech Jawn, that is the Tech JAWN. you can support our show over there. We've got multiple tiers, and any one of those tiers gets you access to our live stream and our after party, where you can actually come hang out with us. We answer your questions and just talk about kind of whatever. So, wanted to kind of do that commercial. And I do want to shout out, last week we did not have any new patrons. This week we've got 3. So I want to shout their names out. I hope I am pronouncing Charles's last name properly. I believe this is Charles Gilligley. Then we have R. Chad Burrow, and then Jonathan Bell. So we picked up 3 new patrons this week. We want to give all of y'all, your props and thanks and your flowers. Thanks you for supporting the show. And Cherish, we want to give you the opportunity to tell folks how they can get at you. If you've got any socials out there, anything that you want to kind of promote now, just let folks know how they can get at you.
Yeah, from a work perspective, I'm always trying to expand my LinkedIn network. So find me on LinkedIn, Cherish Samuels. Should be able to find me pretty easily with that name. And I'm on Instagram at Cherish the Geek. I'm on Twitter too, but honestly, I probably post twice a year. So I'm more of a Twitter stalker, but I'm on Instagram daily. So any people out there who like to be entertained with life as a working parent of a chaotic 5-year-old, you'll find that in my stories on Instagram.
All right. And you can find me on the internets at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH.
And I am at Robb Dunewood on all the things. And we are at the Tech Jawn on all the things. So until we meet in a week's time, peace.
Peace.
Thank you.